What's going on, guys? So of course today on this 00CTOBER review, as the title implies, we're going to be looking at my custom build that I started at the beginning of the month, sort of. But as acknowledged in the very first review of this month, that my Exia was going to be parted out to become a part of a couple different customs. As you guys have already seen with Thomas's video the other day, that the chest ended up in his RX-AGE, which is a pretty cool build. Now, at time of filming that, my custom, which is called Grampage, is not, or was not done. Was not even started painting, and actually still had virtually all of the construction left to go. But now it's been a couple weeks. My time. Obviously, it's only been like a week for you guys. It's done. And I have been kind of chronicling the build, sort of behind the scenes, with the 00CTOBER diaries, along with everything else I've been doing. And honestly, it has been a heck of a build. Now, if you guys haven't seen it, I posted it before on my Instagram. This whole build is based off of this, and it is actually a gunpla I made in Gunpla Battle Warfare, or whatever it's called. Gundam Warfare Gunpla Battle, I guess. GW. Either way, you guys know the game. And I wanted to say I could make this thing in real life, and I have gotten as close as possible. So, combining the G30th Gundam, so to speak, the Exia for some parts, and the AGE-1 from Rodimus 13. So this was kind of a cross collaboration of parts. He got parts of my Exia, I got parts of his Gundam AGE, and then using the Grandpa Gundam that I had as a base. Now the reason it's called Grampage and there's no real Exia in the title, which I thought about calling it Grampagea, just sounds weirder, so I'm calling it Grampage. And I know that Joey Ganoda is going to leave a comment down below of I should have called it that because we've talked about it, and I said no, Grampage was the original name because it was just AGE-1 and Grandpa Gundam combined together. Now if I was smart, I would have combined the O Gundam with that and with those two, so we have kind of the base kind of RX-78s of their own universe. But of course Exia is awesome, so I did that. Now I have done some modifications versus what the one in the game has, because you can actually fuse things together in real life out of plastic and stuff like that. Also took modifications, major modifications, to make these 2.5 kits work together, such as the shoulders, as we'll look at here in a minute. Those took a lot of basic custom building and customizing to make them work, and also something I'd never done before with extending the torso of the AGE to actually make it fit the dimensions of the Grandpa, which was not the original plan. The original plan was to kind of fuse the two torso bits together, cut one off, did all that. It was easier just to add plate to the bottom, so that's a first for me. And also this has been a heck of a build, considering I've done most of it over the course of 2 weeks or so, not counting the build of the original Gundams thrown into it. But for now, that's enough of me talking like this. You guys want to see what it actually really looks like, so let's do that. Alright guys, so just before we get to the actual thing, this is kind of what's left over from my Exia and a little bit of the Grandpa. So actually I dropped it somewhere, hold on. Where did I put it? Oh, it's behind the camera. So we've got the torso of Grandpa, the shield from Exia, the rifle, and of course the bazooka as well. I didn't use that. Now my actual one in the game does use the beam rifle. I just didn't feel like doing that because I like the weapon it has. And then I have the legs from Exia, which were untouched. So hey, those can be the base of another custom. Now you say, hey, you've got some parts left over there, Shoky. Why can't you build something on the opposite front? And that's entirely possible, except I have no arms for this guy. So it's that. But I think these legs will likely go towards that weird Trans Am Exia that the GN arms came from. I think I could use some of that. Now, unfortunately, I think I could have some of the arm bits left over from that Exia, or this Exia as well, so I can actually kind of get everything back to looking like a normal, regular style Exia, not that strange Trans Am one, except for the chest. There's nothing I can do about that. But, you know, we'll see what happens. If there's nothing else, I've got a good basis for another custom down the line. So I've got all these bits left over, stuff like that. So like I was saying a second ago, originally my idea was to fuse this smaller torso with the Age one, because the Age is off-center, whereas this one is on-center. The peg itself literally goes into the center line of the Gundam and plugs, you know, virtually dead center on the hips, whereas on the Age it's actually offset. That created a whole lot of issues. And of course the shield for Exia, I just have no need for it here, so I got that. I also have plenty of spare bits now from other kits, so I could definitely do some customs down the line. And of course having some leftover Gundam parts is always good. But let's show off actual Grampage. Okay. And here we go. And there is Grampage in all its glory. Now, this color scheme came specifically from the game with, I'll have to look it up at the end, but I was just going through and I'd already made the custom itself, at least with the Age and the Grandpa parts, and then I slapped on the Exia head and the GN sword, and then this color scheme with the yellow and the gray kind of came up. And originally in the game, I couldn't tell if it was white or silver, so it made more sense to make it silver. So now we have yellow, silver, and gray. Oh, this was a heck of a thing, especially all of the masking, which you'll see on all the parts. But as we talked about in the 30th Gundam review, I got that because it had all of the panel lines and like that, like the realistic version, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and kick on the turntable so you can see it in the round. And you got the shield there with all the different gray parts. Well, what was that? And then yellow masking on there. And even on the back side, I've got the GN drive fused in there. We'll take a lot of closer looks here. But this thing was not easy to make because the Age torso is too small and too short. Also, one of the most updated kits out of all of this, probably the newest one. I believe it was in 2011, somewhere in there. And it uses peg-style shoulders, so the shoulders themselves are mounted on pegs. The Grandpa Gundams has ball joints coming off of the shoulders. So that required an enormous amount of effort to figure that out. But the Exia shoulders mount very similar to the Ages. So it's a weird combination of the Exia internal shoulder inside there, kind of glued in place, cut off, and then using the Grandpa shoulders covering that, and then everything else kind of going. Why am I seeing flashes? Anybody else noticing that? I hope that's not real. I can't tell. But basically, it took a lot to make this work. Like I said, elongating the torso by adding in plug plate down here to actually raise it up enough so it actually looked proportionate, and then getting the shoulders to get in place. Now, unfortunately, the way that the shoulders are constructed ended up not working out in my favor for articulation. I planned it so they would be a little bit more articulate. However, glue doesn't care about your plans, and they glued together more solid than they should have. There should have been more shoulder articulation, and when we get there, I'll show it off. But here, let me... now that we're kind of done with turntable time, I will pause it and move on. Okay, so now we're off the turntable. We can take a bit of a closer look. So if you look at the head, I did still use the normal Exia eyes, but you can see the color scheme has changed significantly with the yellow faceplate and the gray chin. That was all part of that same design. Everything was picked out by the game, so I didn't do that. Now you have swapped out also the yellow on the cheek vents for some gray, and you can see the blue inside the GN condensers there on the camera. And then if you can come around to the back side on the back camera, that was all from the GBN guard frame. that we looked at not long ago. I didn't use that sheet for anything, and then I use it for all of this, including making a custom age symbol there, which is not perfect by any means, and honestly did not work out the way I wanted to, but in the end it does look okay. Now the yellow for the most part is all camel yellow, the same thing I used for my Bumblebee review, if you guys saw that. So the Bumblebee was painted with camel yellow, a little bit more orange. Now a couple things that were already very yellowy orange, like here on these skirt pocket things, missile pods, whatever the heck they're supposed to be, those actually were so orange already I had to hit them with a little bit of actual pure yellow to brighten them up because they're very orange. Same thing with the chest vents, which are still a little bit more orange, and same thing with the collar. But for the most part, the chest is almost entirely age. There's almost no changes. The shoulders are where the changes are. You still get the articulation in the chest like that, and even the butterfly there. Oh, and by the way, the head does work. So it is just deep ball joint mounted head. Looks good. I like it. The shoulders, like I was talking about, let me pull off the shield. We'll come back to that later. It's a little tight. So the shoulders, like I said, internally right in here, you can see that it's a little bit weird. Internally, inside there is the actual Exia top of the bicep / shoulder joint, including the polycap, which actually gives you some range of motion just by the polycap. But unfortunately, that's all we get. And that shows off the way the bicep is connected. So that's about as far as the shoulders can go. My original intention is, because the way the Exia shoulders plug into the armor, the shoulder armor, that's actually included in there. I actually cut it down to rings, and they're glued to the inside of here. Unfortunately, the actual joint glued as well, so these were supposed to pivot the same way inside the armor, and it didn't stay that way, unfortunately. Another thing you can see here is a bit of a blemish. I don't know what happened. It brushed up against something right there, and even trying to add another coat didn't fix it. So unfortunately, that sucks. But the shoulders are nice. They do work somewhat. I mean, you know, I granted it sucks that I don't have the full articulation that I wanted, but you can still go all the way around. You just got to watch the back spoiler. And it's good. And you get some more paint here on the side vents. The biceps do rotate, however, because of the way they were modified. So the normal G30 goes all the way up and into the shoulder joint. It has a very long peg, about that long. I had to cut that down to work with this, so it's actually going through its own little shoulder clamp here. And I'm just going off a bit of friction and then the bit that's inside. That's about as good as it gets. It does rotate, but it also does fall off fairly easily, as we already saw. But you can see a lot of the masking and stuff that I had to do here. This was all solid color. I painted the yellow first because that makes sense, and then a couple layers of gray after about an hour and a half of masking off all of the arms. All the bits of the arms, and you can see all the way around. And then I have another really bad blemish right there. That's some of the worst painting issues I've had in a long time. Where are those flashes coming from? Is the camera just freaking out, or is it just me? Okay, so, and then come down to the hands, which are just Exia hands inserted in the joints. They're exactly the same, no big deal. But if you come over to this side, where the GN sword is, you can see I have actually cut a hole in the forearm for the GN sword to plug into, like so. So it's still powered the way it should be. And then using all those extra joints, you do get this beautiful new GN sword color scheme with the big yellow blade and all that stuff. Big silver. Is that a hair? Something. And I did a lot of the detail painting this morning. I did the main painting yesterday. So all these like little silver dots here, the yellow on here, a little bit of gray back here, and then even touching up bits of this were all part of doing some detail work, much like the gray on the shoulders. And actually coming to the back here, The yellow all around the GN drive and these thrusters were all painted this morning by hand. The little gray bits here on the skirts is right inside there by the yellow. Hard to tell. Those were all painted this morning. The silver parts back here on the back of the legs, like those were copper on the original kind of realistic version and or MG 3.0. And then even these little gray parts right in here, they look like shadows, which is fine. It's kind of how they're supposed to look. Those were all done this morning. And then the side skirts and all that are perfectly good. Now the torso, like I said, is just extended. It still functions exactly as it should from the Age, so that works. It does rotate perfectly fine. The ball joint in there, however, I screwed up the hole. I made it too big originally, so I've actually filled it in with sprue glue and then put the ball joint polycap in place so it would seal kind of a half or hemisphere around it and actually give it some more grip, and it worked out fine and dandy. He should still have the shimmy, but it's a lot tighter than it used to be. And if you look at the legs, we still got all of the same articulation from the Grandpa Gundam. So it does rotate. And you can see all the masking. The masking on the legs took forever. Same thing here on the knees. The knees, I actually did backwards. I meant to paint the knees silver first and then do the gray, and I did it backwards. But it masked out perfectly fine. The calves down here, along with the thighs, were all masked off and done at the same time. They're soft on the backside. And then you can see right here on these little kind of thrusters or whatever they are on the knees, I added the little bit of blue stickers just for the heck of it, just to make those pop. They were gray and kind of boring, so that's a little addition I did there. Articulation is still the same. No big deal inside there. I did have to deck out a little bit of paint inside those joints. I didn't quite get the spray in there. Now, there's only one little spot that I missed on the detail work and masking, and it was these little bits down here at the bottom of the legs. Those should have been gray as well. I just said screw it, it wasn't worth it. And then even inside here, just did the pistons. It's the same silver as everything else. So this is Tamiya Silverleaf, one of my favorite silvers. This was one of like a navy gray 2, I believe it was, for all of this. I was going to go with a much darker one, and this worked out better. And like I said, this is all camel yellow and maybe even a hint of some regular yellow. The camel yellow was running very, very thin by the end, so I had to kind of do what I could. And then just added some silver to the bottom of the feet. Let me go ahead and get into stand. One thing that sucks about the Grandpa Gundam is there's not enough ankle pivot so that he can stand flat-footed in an A stance. So that part sucks. Now, if we look at the shield real quick, because I keep forgetting about it, it is mostly silver, just masked off yellow for that bit. The cross star symbol, every time I turn that, it flashes. It is done with the gray, and then hand-painted gray details on the inside, just so that it would look a little bit better. Now, one thing I didn't do was add like a little hole on the back for the shield to plug into. Oh well, whoop-de-doo, it's no big deal. But I guess the only real thing that sucks, like the build was good. I love how the paint turned out and all that. The shoulder joints that did not want to work was about the only thing that sucks. And they almost work when they were fresh. But now that it's all together, I'm not even going to stress it. It looks good. It's holding together really well, with the exception of the biceps that tend to drop off occasionally. But I do love the way this thing came out. And then doing little details, like I didn't have to add the GN drive. That wasn't part of it. That is the Exia GN drive, just cut really, really into shape and crammed in there. And it looks awesome. And it blends right in, so you don't even notice it. But that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a really nice fusion of Exia and Age. And then, of course, the Grandpa details. So, honestly, it came out about as good as I could expect, with the exception of the articulation fails. But the paint blew away my mind a little bit and really challenged me in the masking. I used all kinds of different masking tapes, even using some Model Masters, however, super thin like tape to get in some tighter corners. But ultimately, I think it's really, really good. Now, it actually didn't look bad in its stock colors before I painted it, because everybody is red, blue, and white. So it really still worked, with the exception of the torso addition there, which I sanded down pretty good, if I'm honest. It blends in very nicely. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. And you can see it more from a distance. Now, I don't have anybody else handy here. But comparing to standard Exia in Trans Am mode, so to speak, you can see just the major color differences. But what's funny is just how the aesthetic, like how you can tell how the AGE-1, Grandpa, and all of those things are so similar to each other that you can even interchange the parts, and it's not that crazy. Like even showing off with RX-AGE last week how close you can get using the same kind of parts and they still work together. Now I do want to do a quick comparison just as we are here. So I'm going to set this thing down ever so slightly, stand him up here, and I'm going to compare shots to the in-game version, which if you guys are if you guys do like have me on your friends list on the game, you probably saw this guy in action. So I'm going to set him right there, watch him fall the hell over. So we'll do, okay, so we'll do the side-by-side comparison. So we'll do the front shot there. The left side. The back side. And yeah, I know the main thruster at the bottom is missing, obviously replaced with the GN drive, but that's why I added the yellow accent to the GN drive to give it some kind of feel to it. And then of course the color of the A and the cameras are different. And then the right side with the GN sword, which I did add just a little bit of detail to that it didn't have. So you can see how close I really got. You know, having an actual inspiration for the color scheme made it real easy to make this custom happen, and that's my main goal. And yeah, I'm gonna have to get some brighter lights. I don't think these are really doing it for me anymore, especially in daytime. But guys, let me know what you think down below. So this thing was actually the second custom I managed in 1 week. I painted a different one that'll be popping up, not necessarily on this channel. And I don't actually know when that video might come out. I think on the 31st. So keep an eye out on that on a different channel. But let me know what you think about this guy in the comments down below. If you've got any cool customs, by all means, we're going to show them off tomorrow. So we'll see you guys then. Remember, of course, to check out the 00CTOBER merch. Check out all of the rest of the playlists from this year and or last year. And the year before and all that. And of course, if you want to help support the channel, check out the Patreon and all that stuff. But guys, it has been one heck of a 00CTOBER this year. Building this custom, building other kits for the first time, things like that. And of course, getting to work with some good friends throughout. And of course, being able to see the cool stuff you guys have done along the way. So, of course, stick around tomorrow for the Your Builds segment, where I get to show off all that stuff. And I appreciate you guys sticking with me and watching throughout all of this month. And I'll see you guys later. Remember, as always, keep on building.